Welcome to High Peaks Home, where it's my goal to inform you about all the inner workings of the home. And in this week's episode, we're going to talk about getting ready for sheetrock and a couple of quirks that this old girl has that we need to overcome. And who is this? This is Frankie, the Journey to the Abandoned House, episode 28. Oh, and the timber frame. It's done! The final beam is finally ready. It's only taken me about a day and a half. But I have its destination prepped and ready. I have the beam itself ready. And I'm going to show you all the features to this beam. The first feature we're going to talk about is this little groove that I showed you in an earlier episode for the sheetrock. And just to clarify, if you put the sheetrock in there, now the edge of it doesn't matter how cleanly it gets cut, right? So you can set it right in there. And then from down below, now you have a nice clean line right here, and you don't have to worry about mudding a joint or putting caulk in there or anything like that. Only difficult will be making sure that the beam gets fully masked off when it goes to get painted. But there's no mud work that needs to happen now. That makes things a lot nicer. Next is this nice big pocket here. And if you remember from last week's video, we talked about the last beam that I installed. We were going to do a lap joint. Well, here's the receiving end of that lap joint. There's the top end of the lap joint. On this end of the beam, which will be the far end over by the staircase, I cut this section out because the ceiling right there really kind of dives fairly hard. And instead of trying to cope this to that, this little section over here really doesn't matter. So I went ahead and just eliminated it. It'll give me two things. One, it's going to clear the ceiling, and two, it's going to make it easier to get the beam up into that pocket. All right, last, but certainly not least, is this little pocket here. And the purpose of this pocket is we're going to put in a 2x6, which I have right here. Now what this is going to do is going to allow me to tie this beam into the trusses up above. Kind of think about it like an overhung bridge where all the framework is above it and you have that big arch. The beam, it's in 20-foot solid pine, and she's in. I'll have to admit, it took a minute of scratching the old noodle to figure out how to get that thing in there. And I decided, well, using noodle power versus brawn was the way to go. And it went smooth as silk. And while you guys get to see how I did that, I'm going to run all these rips outside because I have a pile of them. And my wife asked for stakes for the garden. I guess our peas are just growing like crazy. So I'll do that. You guys watch this. So we talked about the beam already and all of its attributes. Now let's talk about the install details. When I installed the beam, I wanted to make sure that I transferred as much load, what little load is here, into these gussets. And the way you do that is you jack up the beam as hard as you can, and then get the gusset in place, fasten it, and when you fasten it, make sure that it's good and tight on all your surfaces. And what I used on this particular install is the Fasten Master headlock, which you know that I love. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. And I just really love the product. So I installed it with these. I did a recessed drill into each of the spots. And I've got a question for you guys. Would you leave these holes just open like this and the hardware exposed? Or would you dowel it in? Meaning you put a dowel in and then you cut it off flush with the surface of the gusset. What would you do? Here's that 2x6 that we mortised into the top of the beam, and you can almost see right there, that is the bottom of a truss. And so we've got this tied directly to that, and then we have that piece there tied into this, and this truss, the truss over there, and then 3 trusses that way. To give you an idea what this is going to look like, I'm standing in the mudroom now and entering the eat-in kitchen, then entering the kitchen area. Straight ahead will be the fridge. Take that left. Now you're entering the dining area and walk through here, and ta-da! There's the main beam in the living room. When installing this post, we realized that this wall here was out of plumb. So what I ended up doing was creating long tapered rips with the track saw and installing them. Very simply, basically nothing to 7/8 of an inch thick, and that brought it out to plumb. And now it's a nice clean surface from the wall that I created, a while back for the laundry room, and now this wall. So now this surface is nice and clean. We can get sheetrock on this and we'll have a nice plumb flat surface. Now, that does not mean this wall is finished. Because it's an interior wall, we have an other interior surface that's going on. And on this side of the wall is the primary closet. In most primary closets, you tend to put build-ins in. And if that wall isn't perfectly plumb, well, that makes the build-in that much more difficult. So I went ahead and trued that side in. So on this side, on the dining room side, it's nice and thin, and on this side, it's thicker on the primary closet side. Because obviously, if a wall is tilted one way, on this side, you'll have the thick end, this side, you'll have the thin end. And then traversely is the case when you get to the top. Now the dining room side is the thicker side, and the primary closet side is the thin side. And then when I built the laundry room wall, here's a top plate for that. You can see the difference here of 7/8 of an inch. And then that's the thickness of this. And then I put a little top piece in, and then the other strip here. And I put a nailer against the timber frame for our sheetrock to land on. Now entering the primary closet, every stud has been furred out to its appropriate thickness, and now it's nice and plumb on the inside here. And in the process of doing this, when I furred this guy out, it took so much to do it that the stud that was going to be used for a nailer ended up getting covered up. So I didn't need to put another full-length stud in this location to give myself a nailer. I went ahead and just grabbed a pile of blocks that I had. So there's one there, there's 2. A little gap here, that's not a big deal. 3, 4, and 5 way up there. So now we have a nice nailing surface to go with. And then I put another block across the very top up there. So I have a nailing surface there. The primary closet is all set. I think the only thing I have left in there to do is going to be the electrical for it. So one more thing to check off the old list. Another week down, timber frame is finished, and I started in on the checklist type items for the sheetrock preparation. And next week, that's what it's going to be. We're going to roll right into it. There's a ton of framing that needs to be done and a lot of electrical work. So until next week, thanks for stopping by High Peaks Home. How's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Good. Lucky lose.